All right. We are live. It is Facebook Friday, a very special edition of Facebook Friday. I am super excited to be here with Caleb. Caleb has been it's okay to call him a dear friend at this point, like a very dear friend of mine, at least someone I look up to all the time. We don't hang out as much as I'd like to, only because I'm in Arizona and he's in Michigan. That's one of the main reasons. Otherwise, we'd probably be hanging out all the time.
For sure.
But we're going to be modeling a virtual hacking room today, Caleb.
Yeah.
I want to tell people a little bit about you, but maybe we should talk just a little bit about what a virtual hacking room is and set the stage for what we're doing here. If you've ever been to a ResponsiCon, you already know who Caleb is because he's just walking around handing out knowledge like candy. But a hacking room at ResponsiCon is really the essence of exchanging information with your peers, guided by a pro who has done that thing. And Caleb comes to us and just shares a wealth of sales information. But, okay, so that's a hacking room. Let's talk about Caleb for a second, okay? Caleb, most people will only know you from the shirts that they've seen you on. You realize that?
The shirts.
There is a cult following of Caleb fans. Now, typically the fans of Caleb, they come not from the shirts. The shirts are just a representation that they use. Caleb has grown an amazing company, Lake State Cleaning in Michigan, from the ground up. He has absolutely walked the walk, talks the talk. He also is a fixture at Conquer Coaching. He is not just a coach, but he is a systems builder for that. And then, of course, if you've seen the shirts that Caleb's face is all over, I'll say systems, and it's all about systems. You will not, I guarantee. In fact, if you want to play a game, go get yourself a dozen cookies. And every time Caleb says the word systems in today's talk, you have permission to eat one cookie. And I promise you it won't have any calories in it, but you will be buzzing by the end because Caleb is obsessed with systems. And I think you'll see why as we go. Caleb, I'm not sure what else to say. I know I've seen you on stage and you've shared so much wisdom in large formats. I've been one-on-one with you in hand-to-hand one-on-one conversations, and you hand out a lot of knowledge that way. Is there anything else we need to go over before we get into the actual topic of the hacking room?
Well, I guess I want to talk a little bit about how cool hacking rooms are in general and like why that thing makes ResponsiCon so unique and interesting and why it's like one of the events that I just always go to. It's like automatic. Because it's the only place where this kind of thing happens.
Yeah.
Where you sit down in a small group and you actually do work on a very specific thing. And when you get up and you leave after that hour or however long you spend there, things have changed in your business. You've like implemented something almost like right there on the fly. And how many events can you say that? Like a lot of them, you go and you sit in a chair and someone talks at you and you get ideas and like you get an inflated brain because you can't handle it all. And then you go home and maybe you don't execute on any of it, or maybe it's just, a little nugget here or there. But ResponsiCon in the hacking rooms, you get to go sit down and work with like-minded people that are really smart and really creative, and you actually leave with results, which is just really cool. And it's super fun. It doesn't feel like work at all. So
yeah,
I love it. I think it's one of the coolest things.
We could just paint a couple pictures here just so people really understand the concept here. Like you could sit down with an accountant and figure out why the more you sell, the more you're going out of business. Like an accountant could sit down with you and go through your numbers and figure out how to profitably price your stuff. You could sit down with a content or AI writer, right? You could write emails for automations. You could write video scripts to go into the video recording room and record a video for your website that you've been meaning to do for forever. You could sit down and we're going to have people hacking on how to use different kinds of CRMs and where different CRMs are strong versus other ones that are maybe weaker. And you can sit down and kind of find the right CRM for yourself. We're going to have the Hodges talking about their customer journey map and sharing an actual flyer formatted customer journey map with you so that you can riff off of it and make it your own. And so when you leave, you have a video that's on your website. It's been recorded, published to YouTube, on your website, right? You can have your pricing completely revamped, your bundles and your packages completely curated and ready to go for the next person who asks for a quote for one thing that you need to sell them 20 things. So yes, that is the essence of a hacking room. And you would have someone like Caleb sitting there and going, in fact, today we're going to do a virtual hacking room about how to close a sale on the first touch, in person, over the phone, whatever it is, how to not give your customer many more reasons to choose somebody different. Right? So
that's the plan. That's actually what we're going to talk about here for the next few minutes. So I'm gonna go a lot deeper on the topic during my hacking session at ResponsiCon, but I figured we could kind of go over some low-hanging fruit in this area for a little while. And I think this is something I really struggled with for a long time because I'm just not a natural salesperson. I don't like to be pushy. I don't like to ask people to do something that I'm not sure they want to do. And I tend to, I'm not a really aggressive person when it comes to sales. That's just not my style, So my whole sales approach, back when I was like selling early on in my business, when I was the only person selling and like every deal hinged on me, my whole move was like, have a quick conversation, minimal customer interaction because I was uncomfortable, collect the information, and then tell them, I'm going to send you a quote. And then I would like go home late at night and do all my quotes and email them. And then I might follow up with another email. I would rarely call back. And then Responsive came along, and a lot of my follow up got automated. So at least that got consistent. That was happening. But I was never the type to just like try to close the deal. And I look back on that, and man, if I had just developed some of these skills and strategies that we're going to talk about way back then, where would I be now? I just missed out on so much opportunity, and it was just because I didn't know, and I didn't get educated and practice these skills so that I was comfortable with them. And
I just got to stop for a second and just say, Caleb, you are telling my story. You're telling my story.
Yeah.
And what is it? Like, maybe just to relate to people who might be thinking the same thing. Like, you say it's not your style. I actually think it's not my upbringing. And I'm sure there's a bit of it that's baked into my nature versus my nurture. But I just felt like asking for a sale was rude back in those days, not cool. Maybe even pridefully. Maybe it was desperate,
Yeah, definitely. I think there were, some of those things were part of my subconscious approach to sales as well. But I think what I've learned over time is that the decision to buy or not is not about me. And it's not like what I feel and perceive. It's not fair for me to map that onto the customer. It's not fair to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're the one that called me there. They're the ones that are looking for this service to be done. Who am I to prevent them from being able to do that as fast and as easy as possible?
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
So I think part of it's a mindset thing.
I would be curious. We have some people right now listening. I'd be curious if people throw in the comments section. Would you consider yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? We'll just say 1 to 5. 1 being very timid in the sales system. And I think Caleb did a good job describing it. I feel like I would have rated myself as a 1 out of 5 when I was running my business. up to 5 as very aggressive. I'm going to ask for the close multiple times. And I'm not saying, like, to be clear, for those of you that think that 5 might be manipulative or maybe hardcore or whatever, I'm saying assertive is 5. Like, I'm going there. They asked me to make a sale. I'm here to make a sale. And 1 is, I just hope I get out of here without feeling uncomfortable. Right. Okay. I'm curious to see what people put in the comment section.
Yeah,
1 through 5. Where are you at? Okay. While that comes in.
My guess is, like, if you did a big survey across home services and talk to owners who, most home service businesses, the owners doing most of the selling. My guess is that you would have the majority would be on the lower end of that scale. More timid, less comfortable, less, let's say, aggressive or assertive. I don't even like the word aggressive when we're talking about this, because that's not what it is. It's assertive. Seizing opportunity is what we're really talking about. So I think this is a common challenge for people. So I think that the first principle here is, like I said, it's a mindset thing. You have got to convince yourself that the customer deserves to have an opportunity to buy from you as soon as possible. That's what they're actually seeking. You are not putting them out. You're not putting pressure on them. You're not irritating them. You're not inconveniencing them. It's actually just the opposite. If you give them an opportunity to buy right away, you're reducing friction. You're eliminating work. You're like shortening up their decision-making timeline. And that's, a lot of people are looking for that. They want things to be easy and comfortable and frictionless. And so just wrapping your brain around this truth that trying to sell on the spot is what your customer actually wants, whether they verbalize that or not. I think that can really help you to be more comfortable with leaning into some of these strategies. So if you're one of those people that's a 1 or a 2 on that scale that you mentioned, Kurt, then really give that some thought. What is it that's actually holding you back from being more assertive in a sales situation, whether it's on the phone or in person?
We've got several 2s, and then we got Jahira, who's a special 1 unto herself. She's our first 5.
All right.
Fully assertive. She's there for the sale, right? Yeah. But I do think Sean makes a good point here. And as an introvert myself, I hear this so much. Like, he's speaking to my heart. And that is that when I'm there in person, and I've come a long way, by the way, but as an introvert, that natural thing for me is that I feel a tendency to feel like I'm somehow bullying them into it or making them uncomfortable. The funny thing is that when I have a salesperson at my house trying to sell to me, I'm like, you keep talking. Just tell me what is the bottom line. I'm ready to go. But for some reason, when I'm doing the thing, I'm like, we just keep dancing around, So anyway, introverted, I think, is a big part of it.
Yeah, it is. But you can really flip that in your mind if you just embrace this idea that the customer is, they want to buy.
Yeah.
So let's make it easy for them.
Yeah.
You're doing them a favor.
Okay. So, well, Jahira just said that right there. She's like, if I don't help them, I got to make it easy to buy because someone else might give them a worse experience.
Yeah, I love that point. I think it was Josh Latimer maybe who was the first person who ever sort of expressed that principle that I remember, that you have almost like a moral duty or obligation to try to sell to your customer because you're the best solution for them. You're going to give them the best service. You're going to take the best care of them. And like she said, if you don't If it's not you, it could be somebody inferior.
Yeah.
So let's protect the customer from themselves and
and,
make sure they
and
buy
from the
from us.
competition. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like the first part of it is just wrapping your brain around it's okay to just go for the sale.
Yeah.
And I think that the simplest part of this is just committing to asking for the sale on every call, whether it's a visit or over the phone. That was
Mhm.
something like I mentioned before. I never did that for the longest time. And I think a lot of pros don't do that. And even if you're not really good at the actual sales skill part of it, just the simple act of asking for the sale is going to improve your sales results. It's going to improve your close rate, probably pretty dramatically. If you just commit to
I
doing that
agree.
on every
I,
single
I,
call.
I know that. I
Yeah.
mean, like you just get the courage up to do it with a smile on your face,
Yeah.
and you've already done so much.
It's really that simple. Even if you're not good at sales, if you just
Mhm.
ask for the sale, you're going to sell more. Bottom line. So,
Shocking.
so I would say for anybody that's not doing that now, just make that a part of your process. Um, just be fully
So you
committed to
use
it.
the word process instead of the word system, which I use as interchangeable, and I think you do too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, would you be comfortable sort of sharing as part of this virtual hacking room your process for a checklist, if you will? Uh,
Yeah.
how expressly how much latitude do you give to the salespeople as you're putting together a process?
That's a good question. This is something I'm currently working on with my cleaning company, just really revamping this and getting it more systematized because I really do want them to work off of a framework. Um, and part of the reason for that is to, number one, just to upskill them and make them more effective, but also then if everybody's sort of following the same general guidelines, when we start to make tweaks to improve performance, there's a baseline everybody's working off of. So what I'm putting together, the way I like to map this out is, first of all, you want to connect with the customer. You want to create some rapport. We've all heard that principle of know, like, and trust. People want to buy from people they know, they like, and they trust.
Mhm.
So developing rapport is not that difficult. It really just comes down to showing personal interest and listening. And you can do that by asking questions. So being observant, asking questions. So, like, let's say you're going to a residential property, you can probably guess some things about the customer just as you approach the property.
Yeah.
If they've got kids' toys out in the yard, they probably have a family. And if they've got a sports car in the driveway, that might kind of give you a sense of who it is that you're actually dealing with, what's important to them. The the way their landscaping is kept up or not kept up or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot you can learn before you even have a conversation with anybody or meet anybody.
So that's right there. That's very qualitative instead
Mhm.
of like expressly like you're giving latitude just in allowing people to sort of absorb that information and use it as they will.
Yeah, right. And that can even be done over the phone to a certain degree. Tone of voice, how quickly somebody's talking. There are little bits of information that if you get really observant, you can pick up along the way that just really help you get into a better position to show them value and close the deal at some point.
Mhm.
So start by being really observant. And then when you do start your conversation, ask questions. I was just going over this with one of my coaching clients earlier this morning. I asked them, like, so how's it go? You pick up the phone and somebody needs drywall repair. What do you do? And they said, well, we ask them to send us pictures. And then when we get the pictures, we send them a price. And then I said, okay, what happens after that? And they said, well, a lot of times they don't get back with us. We never hear anything. And then sometimes they hire us. And I said, that's your sales strategy.
You know what, though? In all fairness, if you don't sit down and write a sales strategy down, that's the one that's going to naturally come to the surface. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like someone's like, hey, I think this is a great idea. This is like, I got a lot of stuff going on. This is the quickest path to checking the boxes.
Well, and I told them that the only value point that they are selling on is price at that point.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that they've presented to the customer is, yes, we can do the work and here's what it costs. And so you've got to create opportunities to build value and build some trust, build a little bit of a relationships. And that's where that connecting stage comes in, that building rapport. So asking questions is a really great way to do that. Because first of all, it really shines the light on the customer. This is an analogy that I love. Imagine it's you and the customer, and you're in a pitch black room, and you turn on a spotlight. It's the only light in the room. Okay. The spotlight automatically shines on whoever's talking.
Okay.
So if you're in that scenario, where do you want the light shining?
When I was naive, I actually thought the light needed to shine on me. I'm here to apply for a job. I thought that it, and I don't think I was dumb. I mean, I was wrong, but I thought I got to tell them how many years I've been in business. I got to tell them how great we are. I got to tell them about our special tools that we use. I got to tell them how great we are about our reviews. I got to say all this stuff, and I got to say as fast as I can so that I have your attention, right?
Right.
And so wrongly, I mean, I hope I'm getting this right where you're going with this, but wrongly, I thought the spotlight needed to be on me as the applicant.
Yeah, and that is totally wrong, Kurt.
Yeah, I know, man.
Who's the star of the show in a sales situation?
Your customer, of course.
The customer, right. And so you want that spotlight shining on them as much as possible. So how do you get them talking? You ask them questions.
Yeah.
Ask them questions. And like all that stuff you rattled off about, oh, me. How do you even know that the customer cares about any of that?
Didn't ask any questions, so I don't know.
Right.
But
you
I'm
might
just
be
going to
rattling
say
off
enough
a bunch of
stuff
information
that hopefully
means,
out of 100 things, one thing will be important to them.
And it may not mean anything to them because it may not matter. They may not care about the equipment you use or how long you've been in business. They may care more than anything about how quickly you can get this work done because they've got a deadline or a party coming up or their insurance is going to get canceled. You don't know what's really motivating them and what's really important to them unless you ask them questions. And then
I mean,
you
a
have
lot
to
of
listen.
people, when I was in the window cleaning biz and was out there doing the sales, one of the most common things, once I started realizing the customers started to show, one of the most common questions was, I had my windows cleaned by somebody else and they did blank. Are you guys going to do that too? And sometimes it was a good thing and sometimes it was a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the other people used to run hoses all through my rose bushes. And then as they came around the corner of the house, they might just murder my bushes. And sometimes it was like my other cleaners used to always make sure that they cleaned out the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's two things there. Number one is this is how we operate. You know, I can find it, get a question to your question. But then what's the question right behind that? Why aren't you using that other company anymore?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's a great point. There is usually a question behind a question, and there's a concern behind a stated concern. So that's, again, it comes back to being observant and asking the right questions. So that's like the first stage, is that connection, building rapport stage. And you can do that again by asking questions, getting to know the customer, what their needs are, really ascertaining what the true need is, what the true problem is that they're trying to solve. that's automatically going to build some connection with the customer because they feel like they're being heard and not just talked at.
Yeah.
And then we get into discovery. So that's where we really dig into like what their past experiences have been and what their core motivations are. So if you're in cleaning, people aren't trying to buy cleaning because of cleaning.
Yeah.
There's some desire or there's some missing thing that they're trying to capture, some missing feeling. They're in currently a state that is uncomfortable, that they don't like for whatever reason, and they're trying to get to some future state that is better. And so discovery questions can help you figure out what that is. So it may be something like they're embarrassed because their neighbor's house is cleaner than theirs. They're never going to come right out and say that. Oh, hey, I called you because I'm embarrassed. They may want to feel responsible, like they're into preventive maintenance because it makes them feel responsible and it makes them feel competent or forward thinking. So those are the root emotions of like why you're there in the first place, why they called you out there. And so the discovery questions can help you try to figure those things out. And it allows you to then to kind of create a sales dialogue with them that meets the need that they have specifically and not just some generic conversation.
Yeah.
Yep. Great example questions. Have you had this done before? What was your experience like in the past? And then also, what would they do? So open-ended questions like what would you do if you could get this resolved right now? Would you do it? Is there, assuming we can agree on a price and a time and a scope of work, is there any reason that you wouldn't move forward today?
Which is the key question, because this will peel the layers back to let them know, yeah, price and money aside, my husband's the decision maker. Or price and money aside, I actually am thinking about having my house remodeled, and I'm going to wait till after the remodel. Like all of these sorts of things are really key things to pick up. So that question just peels it back to like get to the real root of whether this is going to close.
Yeah. And all along the way, as you're asking these questions, if you're listening to the answers, you're collecting valuable information that's giving you like this 360 perspective of where this customer is at and what you're going to need to do to bring it across the finish line.
Yeah.
Another type of question that I like is a consequence question. So what would happen? What's going to happen if you don't get this done? Or what's going to happen if you get a bunch of quotes and no one can actually get this done on your timeline?
That's a really interesting way to I've never used that one before.
And what that does, it does a couple things for you. It puts you in a different light because no one else is asking them those questions. And that's the kind of question that the asker of a question like that it has sort of an advisory position. You're setting yourself up as like this trusted advisor when you ask questions like that. And it helps them to actually think forward to a future state where that's unpleasant, that they don't actually want. So when they're visualizing negative consequences right then and there, and you're there ready to provide the solution and help them avoid that, that's a really like powerful sort of like subconscious connection there.
I like that it allows them to have that thought. And it also gives you the insight that it's the HOA they care the most about. It's the fact that the mother-in-law comes in on Saturday and like the mother-in-law is super judgy. So there's so many things that you could look at and go, okay, this will help me to curate better.
Yeah. And when you ask those consequence questions, you're going to get one of three answers. Or, well, I mean, there's basically three outcomes. They either don't decide to buy right now, they decide not to make a decision, or they make the wrong decision. And so you can ask them consequence questions that revolve around all three of those things. What would happen if we don't do a deal today? What's going to happen? What's next for you? What happens if you just kick the can down the road? What's that going to look like for you? What happens if you move forward this project, but you pick the wrong company? What's that going to look like?
Yeah.
So again, you're really putting yourself in a different light compared to the other people they might interact with that are trying to sell them the same things when you ask these kinds of questions.
Those are very smart questions.
Yeah.
I really like them.
So we've connected, we've done discovery now. So we have a really clear picture of what's motivating the customer, what their true concerns are, what their true needs are. Now we can start to actually present our service. And so that's where we go into advantages and benefits. So advantages satisfy logical needs, and benefits satisfy emotional needs.
Okay.
So advantages are sort of like the feature or the option or whatever, and then the benefit is the outcome. So it's sort of like advantage so that you can benefit, if you were to present it like as a statement.
Give me a statement just so I can kind of like.
So for instance, we'll take, soft washing. That's one of the services that we offer at Lake State. So the advantages might be, we'll wash your entire house with a detergent-based process at low pressure so that you can get a deep, long-lasting clean without risking any damage to your home.
Okay.
So the advantages are the features, low pressure, detergent, whatever, so that you can. And then the benefits are that the desired outcome, the positive
long-lasting results. They want that, and they obviously don't want to. They don't. I mean, the home is the biggest. That's one of the things that just for the longest time I've had such a hard time getting my head around. Your home is the biggest investment you've got. In a lot of people's cases, you can get a lot of mileage out of the fact that fear of loss is a very big motivator, right? So if I was to say, so that we don't damage one of the most important things in your life and don't add new hassles of people having to come out and clean up behind us and fix your stucco or fix your siding or whatever. It's funny how just tying that to a few things can be, I mean, that could be the people on the property. Like, oh, people ran hoses. That's funny. We run a training system so that our guys won't ever do anything like that to your stuff. We train our guys on plant, landscaping so that you don't have to worry about any damage to plants.
So, how we said advantages satisfy logical needs, benefits satisfy emotional needs. You probably know the answer to this question, but I'll throw it out there. Okay. Do people make decisions based on logic or emotion?
Well, I know, again, early on, I assumed that everybody is making a logical decision. We use our brains to make decisions. It, again, wasn't until much, much later that I realized, probably what you're kind of getting at, this is such a key thing to realize, is that even when we think we're making a logical decision, it's only because our emotional system went ahead and passed it off.
Exactly. That's pretty much how it works. So we make, generally, the real answer is both. We use both. But it's in a sequence. generally we make decisions based on emotion, and then we justify those decisions based on logic.
Yeah.
But what a lot of us do in a sales process is we get those backwards. We lean all super into advantages, the logical reasons that people should buy from us.
Yeah.
And I think we do that because those logical reasons are things that we're passionate about and interested in. You know, whatever work we do, we're interested in, like the technical side of it, or the, you know, the tools we use, or the processes we use, or whatever, because that's our work, right? So we overvalue those things, and we make them the key, like, selling propositions, when what we really need to be focusing on is what emotion do we need to tap into with the customer. And then
Can I give a quick
advantages.
example that I think people will relate to this, Caleb? The other day I was buying something on Amazon, like everybody else I'm sure watching does all the time. And I can't even remember what it was right now, but I remember like, oh, that price is way too good. I'm going to the next one. I legitimately I didn't buy the thing that looked like it would satisfy my needs because I saw the prices of all the other ones that were, you know, significantly higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to buy this and it doesn't work. Or I don't want to buy this and it works, but not for a long time. Or I don't want to buy, and gosh, I wish I could remember what it was, because it was like, I was almost embarrassed. Like, I wouldn't tell my wife that I did it, because my wife would be like, what's wrong with you? But like, too cheap. Go on to the next one. I mean, that's an example of the emotional taking over the logic and just going, I refuse to let you make this logical decision right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And if you really start to observe, you'll see this happen all the time in yourself and in other, when you're actually the person on the selling side of things. You'll see this happen all the time. But if you can figure out what that emotion is that they're actually trying to achieve and tap into that, how what your product or service can satisfy that emotional need, that's the ticket. That's how you get people to buy from you.
Yeah.
So I'll walk you through like a framework for how you could say this.
Okay.
So you can ask, and I love sprinkling in questions that require the customer to respond in the affirmative.
Okay.
So get them saying yes, yes, yes.
How to win friends and influence people, like 101.
Yeah. So, you know, like, you approach the customer and you say, well, you know how you said you wanted your house washed because it just looks dirty and there's some mold growing on the side? And you wanted that because you think the house looks dingy and, you know, it just makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, based on everything we've talked about so far, I think I understand what you've told me. So I have a proposal now that will fit exactly what you need. And then that's when you go into advantages, you know, your features and things like that. So this feature here will whatever. The way it does that is by whatever. And this is what you'll get out of that. Or so that you can have this or whatever, which is the true benefit that they're going to get out of it. So that you can have the clean home that you want without risk of damage and without the risk of wasting your money because we'll have to come back and do it again in 3 months.
Yeah. So you're trying to get them to say, yeah, like you're basically, in How to Win Friends and Influence People, it says that the importance of getting someone to say yes is that it will make the other yeses come easier. And okay, so let's follow that logic. But let's just sidestep it for just a second and go, but also it's saying you heard my concern. Yes, you understood my concern correctly. Yes, that is what I'm after. Like, we're not playing a mind game. I mean, the mind game comes with it because, science has proven that people who say yes and yes and yes will be more likely to say yes the fourth time. Right. But the reason that they are saying yes and doing this is because, yes, you did understand me correctly. Yes, this is an important thing to me. Yes, this is the sort of solution that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you get to the part where you make the offer has already taken into include your first part, which was to say, I'm going to get curious.
Right.
I'm going to ask you these questions and I'm going to really understand.
Right. That's it. And so you can just keep stacking those types of questions. Like once you've laid out your proposal, you've presented your solution to their problem, you just ask them, do you think this is the right solution for you? Is this what you're looking for?
If I say yes, not only is it one more yes, but I have basically gotten into checkmate with I just told you that I'm going to say yes when you offer it to me.
You're very close because now you've given the prospect an opportunity to verbalize their agreement that they agree with you, basically. And you can add tag on questions to that. So a great one is to actually ask them to explain why they think your solution is the right one. So ask them, why do you think this is the right solution for you? Now they're essentially selling themselves as they answer that question.
Yeah. Well, they're selling themselves. They're verbally doing what their brain is kind of tentatively working through is, I need to do this. I need to have it done this way. I need to have it done this way by this company. And so now this company is about to make an offer to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just works.
So what you've done when you ask them that question is they're no longer listening to a salesperson talk to them and tell them about why this is the right fit. Now they're verbalizing it themselves, and that makes it just so much more powerful. They're essentially convincing themselves that they should buy from you as they explain why what you've just presented is the thing they want. So at that point, it's time to trigger the commitment stage. That's where you ask for the sale. And this is where there's a handful of like strategies and things that and like little sayings, phrases, and things like that you can practice or try out that can just like close the deal at this point. So one of the ones I like is what happens next is, and because people expect to be led through a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you're doing. What happens
that really
next
gets down to the breakdown we were talking about at the very beginning, which is that say as little as possible, be as like you think you're being less awkward by saying less, getting it to them and then emailing them something later. You're basically pointing out right now why we think it's better, but it's worse. They need to be led. Like, I brought you here to lead me. I took time off of work to be here for this. Yep. Or I came over and got you from the other place you were quoting to come over to my house to be led. And if you go there and don't lead,
right,
you're actually making it more awkward.
Well, and the thing is, if you followed this so far, you have led them down the yellow brick road toward the sale.
Yeah.
And if you don't attempt to close, if you don't attempt to get a commitment right now, it's like you stopped leading them down the path before they got to the finish line.
Yeah.
And that's just a lost opportunity. So you can, a great way to do this after you presented your service or whatever is, just like, hey, it looks like we covered everything. So based on what you've told me, here's what happens next. I just need you to sign the proposal, put a deposit down. We'll look at the calendar and we'll lock in an appointment for you that works for your schedule. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
And there it is. Yeah. So what happens next is a good one. And some of these strategies are what I'm going to get into in a little more depth in the hacking room. So what's interesting is if you've done the discovery part right, if you've been thorough there shouldn't be any objections.
Yeah.
Because all of those have already been covered and satisfied as part of the discovery process. So if people have questions or concerns at this point, that just means you need to go back to discovery. There were some other things that obviously they're concerned about that they didn't bring up, that you didn't, or that you didn't ask the right questions about. So you just cycle back to more discovery. Ask more questions. Respect what they say. Don't disagree directly with what they say. Just ask more questions, do some more discovery, and you can come back to that commitment stage, again at some point. So the simple fact is, if you get to this point, this commitment stage, and the customer has agreed on a solution, and there aren't any conditions that are preventing the sale, then own the sale. Give them a chance to just buy right then and there.
Yeah.
And that's where that mindset comes in. Your job is to help these people buy from you. And you want to make that as easy as possible.
So, Caleb, I've had people on here talking about selling memberships or selling subscription services. Do you guys at Lake State do that at all?
We're leaning hard into that this year. Hasn't ever really been a thing that we've talked about it for a long time and just have not really sat down and gotten it all organized and all figured out. But that's like basically when we kick off here in the spring, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be pushing those pretty hard.
So a lot of people speak very highly of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people struggle with it when they try to kick it off. There's lots of ways of doing it. And I don't want to turn this virtual hacking room into that. But, when you ask for the sale for a subscription, you're essentially asking for 4 sales at one time. By saying yes to my 4 seasons package, I've sold you 4 jobs, right? And if you say yes to my once a year package, maybe get them into a 2 or 3 year service agreement, and you've made 2 or 3 sales. Anyway, the reason I'm asking you this, Caleb, especially as you're thinking of going into it, you've done a good job of setting the stage for why we do it this way and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of services that you can buy in subscription nowadays. And there's a lot of people who want your subscription revenue, recurring revenue, And now a cleaning company is changing their model to do the same. And I'm saying that to the people who are listening, who are thinking of doing stuff like that, which, by the way, it's the world is now accepting of it. As much as people say they don't want to do it, it's just the new way. I'm wondering how much of that needs to be seeded at the beginning, because when I tell you the reason we put people on these no worries plans, you never have to worry about it being dirty ever again. The reason we do it is because X, so that Y, right? And you can play that same exact game in terms of what you are selling and the frequency and the packaging prices and the bundling of services within that annual agreement. And by the time I was just thinking about the people who struggle to launch it. Everyone wants it. Everyone wants to make money in the winter. Everyone wants to get their revenue to a trajectory. Everyone wants to be able to just drive out to a house and get the work done whenever it fits in the schedule, because it's just work that has to be done sometime this month. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants it. But people have very varying degrees of success with it. And your whole process seems to lend itself really well to, okay, you want it done for the HOA, but you probably don't want it to ever get out of hand again, right? You don't want your rooftop to be replaced prematurely, I suppose. You don't want your siding to have stains on it that will never be able to be removed. You don't want your windows to have hard water etching. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Was there a question there?
I think my My question was, are you doing it and does it work? And obviously, if you're not doing it yet, you still got a lot of work to do. But you've really got me thinking right now.
Let me speak to it this way. Here's how we're going to sell it.
Okay.
Here's how we're going to pitch it.
Okay.
Remember that you aren't selling a job. You aren't even selling a service. You're selling a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the solution? What's the problem that you're solving? And that's what customers are looking for. They're looking for a solution. They are either running away from something that they don't like and trying to avoid it, or they're running to something that they really want.
Yeah.
So in the case of my business where we sell cleaning, people are usually running away from the feelings associated with having dirty stuff. So what we're selling is not a bunch of recurring services. We're not selling set it and forget it. We're not selling spread the costs out over time. We're selling a permanent solution to that icky feeling.
Yeah.
We're
and that's
selling,
a good conversation. That's a great conversation, by the way.
Yeah. We're selling, you will never feel this way ever again for as long as you have this service plan. Mm-hmm. We're selling freedom, the permanent freedom from that icky, painful feeling.
Yeah.
So that's how we position it. And we'll do that through asking questions like, helping them become very aware of what their current situation is. Because the wider the gap that you can help create for the customer between where they are and where you can put them, where they want to be, the more motivated they're going to be to make a decision and to buy from you. And so we're going to be talking about, storytelling is a great way to do this. So have you ever had your house washed before? About how often do you do it? Maybe every couple years. So if you're like me, probably what you see is, you get it done. Everything looks great. You're super happy. A month later, you maybe start to see a cobweb here or there. 6 months later, it's not looking that great. A year later, it's starting to bother you again, but you just had it done a year ago. And then you spend the whole next year or whatever until you can't stand it anymore. And you're in this state of discomfort the whole time until you finally can feel like, all right, I'm going to spend the money again and get it done. And then the cycle starts all over. You realize you spent 2/3 of that time in a situation that's less than what you want.
Yeah.
What if we could create a scenario where you just never have to have those thoughts or that feeling again?
I think that if anyone out there that's listening right now is thinking about moving to a subscription or, some sort of frequency auto build schedule, I think that what you just said is the pivot point of the companies that are successful versus the ones that aren't. If you're selling a bunch of cleanings at a discounted price that is paid monthly, I can tell you that you probably won't succeed. People it's hard to get excited about signing up for a bunch of cleanings. Mm-hmm. But if you can leverage the way that they feel right now and say, you feel this feeling right now of like, oh man, I got to figure out who to choose. And I got to figure out if it's a good price. And I got to figure out who's going to be the reliable company. You can make that decision today and be done. And also never have this feeling again. That's something worth selling. And it's a conversation that's interesting to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because who would say no to if you were to ask just about anybody, hey, would you prefer to live in an environment that's just clean all the time? Who's going to say no to that?
I mean, the people who are calling you out, they're going to say yes. Yeah, like the only people who are going to say no to that are people who aren't calling you out to come clean,
Yeah, people who just don't really appreciate cleanliness anyway.
But you have somebody guaranteed. Now, Caleb, I'm not sure. We're kind of coming to the end, and I don't want to cut you off. I have a couple more questions, but are you kind of you've talked about getting to the close in your
Mhm.
process, and I'm curious, do you have any other steps that you need to go over? Because I want to tie in one final sort of caveat to this whole process.
Um, Not really. So, like, there are a few. I'm gonna share one other like closing hack. We talked
Okay.
about the one that's what happens next is that's a great one.
Uh,
Another one that I like is what most people do is,
ooh, that's
and
powerful.
right, because now you're leveraging the power of community and sort of following the crowd. If someone feels like most people are doing this, then there must be something to it. And
There's
such a
also another
simple little
a little brother to that one. You got to be careful when you use it, but if you've been curious enough, you'll be allowed to use this at the end. Is people like you often go with.
yes.
And the reason people like you, people who have kids, people who have pets, people who are obsessed with clean, people who have to deal with their HOA, people who have asphalt shingle roofs, people who don't have gutters on this part of their roof, people who have pine trees in their neighborhood. Like people like you can mean many, many different things.
Hmm.
But if you are a good, curious salesperson, it is a very powerful statement to say people like you will often go with this.
Yeah. I like that. People like you, people in your circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
people with this kind of situation, with similar situations,
Mm-hmm.
anything that can help them identify with a larger group. Because what they're doing in their minds is they're saying, well, I'm most people, so maybe I should do that as well.
Another one that goes with it is if at some point they say something that's just like you can all say, "Oh, I'm just like you in that way." Like
Yeah.
if they're like, "Oh, I hate it when white siding has this brown thing on it." Like, "Oh, I am so much like you." When I look at a white sided house with that big brown line across the
Hmm.
bottom, it just screams that like I can't take my eye off of it. Yeah, I'm like that too. Then later on at the end, people like you and me will often go with this. Like if my mom was doing it, I have her do it. People like you and me.
Yeah, and that's what I love about these little strategies is they're so simple. Sometimes it's just a little statement that you
Mhm,
add into like the closing, the commitment phase of your sales, but they
mhm.
have real measurable impact.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So
Sure.
in that hacking room, I'm going to be going over probably a half a dozen of my favorite approaches like that. And then it's going to be like a grab bag. You'll be able to take these home and just this week I'm trying this one. Next week I'm going to try that one. And I'm just going to measure like what happens with my close rate. Am I closing
Build your
better, faster?
process. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then we'll also be talking about overcoming objections because that's always a big thing in sales, right?
Oh yeah.
I already talked about if your discovery is good and if you follow this framework, there shouldn't be any objections. And if anything, there might be some questions. And
Mhm.
again, going back to discovery, you can overcome those. Um, Usually, if people aren't ready to buy at that point, then they just don't have the circumstances to be able to buy. They don't have the money, or the timing doesn't work, or something along those lines. There's a real legitimate reason why you can't close the sale.
So let me ask you the question that everybody right now is thinking in their head, and I'm putting you on the spot, and you're probably going to be mad at me for doing this to you without any warning.
Hmm.
But I got to ask this because it's so key. So many people want to know when is it appropriate to make the sale over the phone? And when is it necessary that we get someone out to the house? Because getting out to the house requires logistics, obviously, but it's not
Yeah.
just your customers' logistics or yours. It's both. It's when can I get there, and how long am I going to make you wait, and how long are you willing to wait, and you're in the buying mood right now. So there's like all these things that I've got to overcome, and I know when I'm into their face, no one's debating the fact that if I'm there in their face and the conditions are right, I'm going to have a better close rate. I'm going to have a higher ticket price. But at some point, we have to draw a line somewhere. And so my question is, where do you draw the line?
Well, technically speaking, we have a set of criteria that we use, and it's usually, based on square footage of the property and some other details of the property. I guess the way I look at it is there a relatively high likelihood that I'm going to miss something by quoting over the phone that's going to put my team in a bad spot.
Okay.
And some of that's just based off of experience, doing this for so long. Like we
I
kind of
live in this
know.
community. You already
Yeah.
know that community. We don't even touch it over the phone. Like
Right. Right.
everything's so custom, right?
Or this type of work just has a tendency to go sideways, or there's surprises.
Construction cleanup. I just got this
Yeah. Yeah.
renovation done.
And if you're watching this, your industry, the things that could surprise you and cause you problems.
Mhm.
So other than that, my sales, like, I guess, philosophy has changed over the past couple of years. Yeah, like Sean says here, getting away from in-person quotes, because it can be done remotely using technology, and that's true. I think there's a time and a place for both, but my goal is, I want to acquire the customer. That's my number one goal. I don't really care about the average ticket. Um, I don't
Really?
I don't really care about uh, what particularly I sell them. I want to acquire the customer. What's the hardest thing to do in home services right now? Nobody's
Acquire the
marketing is
customer.
working. Yeah,
Yeah.
marketing doesn't work anymore. At Google doesn't really work very well. You might find some secret sauce, and maybe you've got a Facebook ad that kills it or something like that. But I work with a lot of people in a lot of different markets all over the country. That stuff's getting harder and harder and more expensive. So when I have a crack at acquiring a customer, I need to acquire them at all costs. And if that means I got to sell them my minimum service just to get them in my ecosystem, I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
because I'm confident that once I have that customer, I'm going to keep them, and the lifetime value is what I care about.
Yeah.
I don't. So that's what I encourage everyone. Maybe you need to like pivot in your viewpoint of sales. Lifetime value is what matters, not your average ticket, not the service you're selling specifically, not selling bundles, packages. Sure, that stuff's all great. Do it. Try to do it. But if the only way I can acquire a customer is to sell them the cheapest thing I do, I'll do it, because I got them on the horn right there, live,
Yeah.
ready to
Yeah.
buy. Acquire the
Yeah.
customer.
Well, thank you, Caleb, for that. I think that was an important element for people to look at, is that this whole framework you've shared, it works over the phone, it works in person. And either way, you're looking at somebody who has a problem. And if you can, I think that if you were to rewatch this and go back, a lot of what we talked about could be used in a manipulative way. You could actually disingenuously use psychology against people, which is not what we're advocating here. But what's important to understand is that you have someone on the other end of that line, you have someone on the other end of that handshake who has a problem, and you're the solution. What is the way that you provide for them a curated result that before you put it in their hands that it is going to be the result that they're looking for? You're the professional, and that's kind of the most important part as we go into this. I'm going to put this up here, homeserviceworkshop.com. As you get ready to go to homeserviceworkshop.com, we hope you'll come to ResponsiCon there at the show. We will be hacking and taking a bunch of people who have tons of experience, putting all that experience focused into the problems that you're trying to overcome, the problems that your customers are trying to overcome. And you can build a customer journey for your customer base, for your company's solutions that you provide. And I think that is the key here. What Caleb has shared is that this isn't a framework of how to hoodwink somebody into buying something that you want them to buy. Caleb just said, I'll sell you the minimum thing. I want a customer and they want a solution, right? I mean, it doesn't get a lot more simple than that. The problem is that if you're not willing to ask the questions, uncover, and start putting together a solution, people are willing to actually agree before they even know what the price is, because you've listened to them, which, by the way, in today's world, it's really hard to get someone to listen to you.
Yeah.
Everyone has a message they want to say, or anybody's willing to listen. So
Yeah, and that's just why it's so important to strike while the iron's hot and try to close that job when you've got them. You know, don't leave it to chance, and don't leave the door open for your competitor to go seal the deal.
As we close out here, Sean asked the question. Jessica Murphy asked if we could start over. Caleb, do you
Oh,
think pricing
Jessica.
all your services and offering your complete menu so people can upsell themselves is a good idea? Done through ResponsiBid, of course. And I know you guys are heavy ResponsiBid users, but you know, talk to that just a little bit.
Yeah, there's a fine line there because I think it depends on how many services you offer, because we've seen scenarios where, you know, we do quite a few different things and it can overwhelm people. So I prefer to do that situationally. We do want people to have prices for everything that we do, but I think it's when you deliver those prices that that's a factor. If I'm trying to get them to buy, then I'm more likely to try to sell them what they're asking for and some highly relevant upsell opportunities. And then maybe after the fact, I'm gonna offer them some pricing on all the other stuff that we do, because I don't want to bog them down with too much detail to process during that initial sales conversation. So I think you've got to read the room a little bit when it comes to that, and you've also got to know your product offering and how overwhelming that might look to a customer if you just try to have them drink from a fire hose, so to speak, in terms of all the different services that you offer.
Yeah, I know he asked you, Caleb. I'm just going to add from my experience. You know, when you go to a restaurant and they've got a 10-page menu, like I'm just not going to read the whole menu. I'm here for lunch. I'm not here for a Harry Potter novel. And I don't know what all these different versions of cheese are, like Asiago versus Happy Jack or Pepper Jack, whatever, Colby Jack. Like that, like I don't know. And you're naming sauces. So I think that, Sean, what's important is that instead of saying, here's the 72 services that we can offer, which one is best for you, as the curator, the waitress that's going to make the most money is the one who says, I've got this whole menu here. Here's our daily specials. Let me ask you guys a quick question. Are you really hungry? Yeah, I'm really hungry. Are you into seafood, or are you more of like a pork person? Are you a beef person? Like, you know, are you vegetarian? You know, okay, great. Here are the three things. You know, you can have the whole menu in front of you. Feel free to peruse it all you want. But for those of you that are in a buying mood right now and are hungry, I can fast track you to our 3 most popular dishes for people like you. And that's what I feel like you've done today, Caleb, is you've said, I asked enough questions that I was able to open the menu, point to the 3 things, and say, most people like you who leave here smiling, they eat this thing. And guess what? A lot of people are going to be super, super loving that. Now, again, if I go to McDonald's, I'm not going to, like, there's 6 items and 6 value meals to choose from. You know, there's 6 value meals to choose from. Like, we don't need to talk about it too much. So anyway, this is what's going to be happening at Home Service Workshop, ResponsiCon specifically. We're going to be going through and hacking stuff like this. For those of you who are not going, for those of you, I know Sean's here. He's got an all access pass. He won it. I'm super excited for him. Sean's in Australia. The problem is that we can record the workshops where there's like more of a classroom format, but a hacking room cannot be recorded. Where people going through their financials, people going through their own customer journeys. They're very personal conversations between a pro guide like you, Caleb, and someone who is an attendee trying to figure something out. So that is the value of being in person at ResponsiCon specifically. So if you are wanting to hack this, sales of your system, or you're wanting to knock out some videos or whatever, all the value propositions of ResponsiCon is sit down, get stuff done with a pro. You need to get your ticket quick. HomeServiceWorkshop.com. Go to the ResponsiBid show or ResponsiCon show. Sorry, get your ticket. The room block is closed, but If you click on the thing, you can put your name, your email, say what nights you want. We should still be able to get a room for you, but you got to act fast. We're down to the wire now. Like we're 2 weeks away at this point. So
Coming up
get your
quick.
plane tickets, get your tickets. Let's go. And Caleb, we'll be digging in a lot more when we're all together. So
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you so much for today.
Yeah, happy to.
All right, guys, we will see you at the home service workshop. And if not, well, we'll just miss you. But have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.